Thanks, Cal. I really appreciate that introduction, but I think Cal stole a lot of my thunder, especially with the thank you campaign. Cal, I really appreciate what you did with that slide presentation because it has been one of the things that I've wanted to try to do since I started here in this position was try to figure out a way that we could quantify what is actually happening with all the money that we have raised through CFC over time. So I think that's a very good start. Again, good afternoon. I appreciate all the work that Shelly and her team does to put this training together. And in fact, I ran into Shelly and Lavina in the airport, and we were chatting a little bit. But you know, not that we got a lot of snow back there, but it was enough to disrupt stuff. You know, at least planes coming in and connections. So by the grace of God, I'm just glad that I'm here today, and it's my pleasure to be here. I can't start this segment of the training without first acknowledging the hard work of all the PCFOs. You know, Cal was talking about thanking federal employees for what they've done, but I really want to just take a few minutes to thank all of you for what you all have done. The PCFO community has been tremendous in making sure that we've gotten from the first executive order to get this program stood up to where we are now. And not to be overlooked, the federations have played a huge part in that too, in helping to ease the burden for OPM. Federal employees, postal employees, military family members have done a huge amount to make sure that all the money that we have raised have gone to charity. So I really appreciate that. I'd also be remiss if I didn't extend to you our heartfelt thank you from OPM Director Archuleta. She is a very huge champion of this program, and also previous OPM directors and previous CFC directors as well. I think with the urgency to reinvigorate and reform this program, which is one of the oldest workplace programs or benefit programs in the government, oftentimes the generosity of federal employees and your contributions can get lost. So I really do want to, you know, ask you guys to give yourselves a round of applause because this has been a huge undertaking. Over the past years, I've heard some tremendous stories about what the CFC has done to help people, federal employees, military families, and people that they know have really benefited from the program. For example, Megan, an IRS employee who had a son who was stricken by a rare illness, was helped by a CFC charity. And those charities also helped her deal with the stress. Another example, Ron, a DHS employee, also shared that he had two parents that were stricken with illness, but a CFC charity that he helped support was there for him. So I could stand here all day talking about stories, and as Cal said, we need to also make sure that these employees understand how much we appreciate what they've done. At OPM, we're doing our best to ensure that employees and military personnel have a chance to give and participate in the CFC, all employees. We view CFC as one in a suite of employee benefits that is used to attract, retain, and engage federal employees in the workplace. Your ideas, your energy, and your commitment have helped us raise over $7.6 billion. And we're going to continue to need your help, your support, and your ideas, and your talent to reach out to employees to tell them exactly what this benefit program is designed to do and how it can benefit other employees for years to come. It's really hard for me to imagine that just 5 short years ago, I stood in this very same city. In fact, probably not far from here, maybe about 5 blocks. It was at the Omni Hotel. It was my first CFC training event. I had only been on the job 21 days. So if you could imagine standing up here and seeing all your faces, most of you I met for the first time was in 2010. It was quite daunting. In fact, when I took a shuttle bus over from the airport, and I was sitting in the back of the shuttle bus, and it was full of CFC conference attendees. And they're in the back, they were whispering, and they were saying, I heard they got this new director, and you know, I'm just sitting back there, and they were talking about my staff, and all good things, though. But it was just amazing to have that much anonymity to sit back there and just kind of listen and take in what was going on. So I can't imagine, a lot of things have changed since 2010, but I mean, if you really think about it, a few things have changed. Are there any Seattle Seahawks fans in the house? What about Washington Redskins fans? Whoa. No Redskins fans. That is impressive. I'm going to tell. Well, so for you folks, show of hands, how many guys remember a player, NFL coach named Jim Zorn? A few of you? Okay. Well, right before the training in 2010, just to show you how much things have changed, this guy was brought in to replace Jim Zorn, Mike Shanahan. And of course, what did the owner of the Redskins say? That he was going to bring the next Super Bowl to Washington, D.C., right? How many Redskins fans remember how that worked out? Oh, this is going to be great. I'm barely touching this thing. Now, how many folks can't live without an iPad? Back 2 weeks before that training in 2010, Apple just rolled out the first iPad, talking about it was going to revolutionize information and how we know it. That was just in 2010. 2 weeks after the training, just about 2 weeks, America experienced its greatest environmental disaster when the Deepwater Horizon drilling well exploded. At that time, gas shot up to over $2.75 a gallon. We're still dealing with the fallout of that environmental disaster. Again, a lot of change for some, not a lot of change to others, but that's what we were dealing with back in 2010. Come on now, work with me. Got to get this fixed, man. Well, I'm going to show you a slide of someone who is now in Texas, that was in Alaska, who has transitioned to this area. This was back in 2010. She obviously liked warm weather a lot better now. But back in 2010, over 1 million donors, federal, postal, and military, donated to the CFC. Just 5 years ago, there were 1 million people who would give to this campaign. So we've changed a lot since then, some for the good, some not so much. But my CFC family, my staff, we haven't really changed that much. Well, a little bit. But I do want to just give a quick shout out and let everybody know, maybe some new people here who don't know what my team looks like, who can't put a face to a name. I want to ask Curtis Rumbaugh if he would stand. Curtis manages our national, international. And he's a subject matter on all things CFC. Mary Capulli, she is our, she's our resident CPA and a wealth of knowledge, all things CFC. She's our compliance specialist, so if anybody has ever dealt with any of our audit issues, she's a person. Marcus Glasgow. He's somewhat new to the team, but he was on our commission, and he also went and served his country in Afghanistan, and he still came back to come work with us. So he's been our guru on data and data analysis and our IT person. So Marcus, thank you. Gwen Savage, she's somewhere in the back. There's Gwen. She's our customer support and touch point on a lot of questions when you call and OPM, she picks up the phone. We also have 2 members back in DC, Charlize Scott, who is also a newer member of our team. She's back holding down the fort. And many of you recall we had a team member named Pat Randall. Pat recently moved on to another agency to do some other things. So we have replaced her with a gentleman named Richard Adams. So that's the CFC team. And just give them a quick round of applause. Hold it with one hand and quickly push with the other. Okay. I'm glad we took care of the hard stuff. Just quickly, worked. Thanks, I didn't know it was a trick to this. That's just a quick visual of the regional map that each one of the 3 representatives that cover across the country. So whenever you have a question in any of those geographic areas, you know who to call. Curtis Rumbaugh manages the campaigns in red. Marcus manages the campaigns that are in blue. Did I get that wrong? Okay, and Mary manages the campaigns that are in green. Many of you have seen that slide before, but I've noticed there's a lot of new faces here today. Didn't work that time. I just wanted to quickly point out a couple things that we did last year, just in case anybody's keeping score. We continue to maintain an e-giving option through Employee Express and MyPay. Thanks to Tony DeChristofar for his help and support and working with DFAS on keeping that moving and some changes that we needed made. We also rolled out the universal giving options to all employees and military worldwide. We issued national CFC awards recognizing people for their outstanding contributions to CFC last year. We issued final CFC rules in April 2014. Of course, we'll talk a lot more about that later. We held several meetings with Federation, PCFOs, and charities on the impact of those rules after we published them. And this is where I said Cal stole my thunder. Is we conducted a couple of employee survey and focus groups to just get a sense of what they're looking for in terms of the CFC from OPM. And many thanks to a lot of you for hosting or pushing out those surveys. And we also did a completed initial analysis of taxonomy codes, which was essentially an analysis of how charities get classified according to their mission. And so by using the designation data, we were able to determine kind of where those dollars are flowing, where donors are really interested in what sort of sectors, what industry components that they're giving to. And so that was the genesis of a lot of the analysis that underscored the thank you campaign that was just discussed. We also got approved through OMB some revisions to the 2015 applications, including eliminating the statewide and adjacency application option, and we sought Director Archuleta's approval and proposed changes to the CFC zones. So we had a few things going on last year, and in addition to all the things that we just named, we were able to do our day jobs, the business of government, so to speak. Most of you already have seen these numbers, at least that one. Oh, come on, man. This is just a quick snapshot, easy for me to say, harder to do. This is a snapshot of comparison of the 2012-2013 campaign results. As many of you know, in 2013, we raised almost $210 million for charities. Again, a sizable amount, especially considering back in 2013, a lot of employees were affected by furloughs and appropriation lapses. So we still did a great job of getting the word out there, even though a lot of campaigns started late. But as you can also see, the participation decline continued to underscore that federal challenges in the program, and may even show that federal employees are frustrated too with how appropriations are being doled out in Washington and across the country, as they're all often faced with furloughs and cutbacks. The average gift, however, continues to go up. And so we're looking for you all to assist us in getting the 2014 data as quickly as possible. This week, I believe, we opened up the 14-17 data repository so you could start populating that with the 2014 results. One of the good things about e-giving is that it's cheaper and faster to get the results as it relates to online giving. So that's one of the huge benefits to online giving. And as you can see, it continues to be the fastest growing way that people give in the campaign. For 2013, employees gave another $10 million more than the year prior in terms of e-giving systems, to about $63 million. Even with furloughs and sequestration, folks really gravitated to the online giving solutions. So we're able to at least capture preliminarily what the 2014 results are already, even before you submit your 14-17 results. So what you see here is what we're projecting in terms of e-giving for this year will be approaching $90 million, which is the largest that we've seen so far. So if we were to take sort of a crystal ball and say, even if giving was flat, overall total contributions last year were about 210, you would see e-giving approaching about 42% of total contributions coming in through e-giving solutions. Now, if the number is smaller, of course, that percentage goes higher. It starts approaching 50%. On the flip side of that, early indicators are projecting that the number of donors that use e-giving for 2014 is down. Now, again, this could be an early indication of overall participation, but we won't know that for sure for a few more weeks. But we're projecting that we'll have over 153,000 donors that give using online giving tools. And again, understand that every campaign still, to this day, in this century, does not have online giving or a website. Yes?
First off, I am seriously disappointed. This conference was a waste of time. I haven't seen any pictures of the baby. But more importantly, has there been any identification between the 11 and the 12? That's a big. Is that MyPay? That was first year for MyPay, wasn't it?
There was. I think what you're looking at for 2012 is the big spike.
Right.
2013 was MyPay. So I believe what contributed mostly to that big spike was I personally got on the phone with just about 150 campaigns and begged them to get on Employee Express. And so we had a big spike from 2011 to 2012 of campaigns that actually used Employee Express. So I think that's what attributes to that. Now, what those campaigns didn't know is that the next year we were going to pilot MyPay, which again, the jury was out because there was a lot of discussion at DFAS on whether we could actually pull it off. But I wanted as many campaigns as possible to be on Employee Express because Employee Express is basically the backbone for MyPay. And so once we added the MyPay campaigns, it was easy. So that's why you see that big donor spike. And we just had a lot more donors in that year overall, too. But to your first point about the baby will be 4 in 2 weeks. So she's not a baby anymore. So one of the reasons why I decided not to bore you all with the non-baby pictures is that, at that age you start need consent, right? They go out and get attorneys and, there's copyrights. So, no, I'm just kidding. I just not decided to bore you this year, but if there's an overwhelming reason to see Kayla at 4, I'll show one tomorrow. Only on applause, though. That's more than I got to shave my mustache last year. So I want to talk a little bit about government transformation initiatives, and I'm not going to get into this a whole lot because I spoke a little bit more about it last year. Just suffice it to say that all agencies are really being pushed as Congress is really trying to reduce the size of government. And so it's trying to do that through the appropriations process. Basically, if you cut off the money, you have to do less, or you have to at least focus your priorities, right? So that's what's happening across the entire government spectrum. And so the thing about it is that we in the CFC world had already, if we can get this right, in the CFC space, we had already begun our transformation before Congress really started tightening the belt on agency appropriations. So a lot of you remember back in 2011, I think my spouse was 8.5 weeks pregnant. Director Barry flew down and came down to New Orleans and said, hey, we're going to stand up this huge initiative. We're going to call it the CFC 50 Commission, and that guy right there is going to lead it. And I'm like, whoa. And we had the baby 2 weeks later. But despite that, we were still able to stand up the commission. By September of that year, we had our first meeting. We had started to really delve deep into the issues of CFC, and we came up with what I think were some very solid and profound recommendations for what transformation should happen in the CFC program. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what we have been doing since then, but I do want to underscore something I said earlier, is that at OPM, we have an entire suite of employee benefits for federal employees: health insurance, life insurance, dental and vision, all the things that we believe that attract and retain a great workforce. The CFC Workplace Giving Program is just one in the suite of benefits. And we want to make sure that it's consistent with other suites of benefits that OPM offers. There are payroll interfaces that have to be done. There are reconciliations with payroll office for withholdings for health insurance, life insurance. But the CFC process is completely different than those other benefits. And so part of this transformation is to bring that in line, is to try to make sure that the OPM benefits that it has and for employees for health, life, and insurance are consistent with that. And so we wanted to streamline the application process, and we were able to initially start that by allowing OMB to give us the privilege to basically eliminate the adjacency and statewide application. And we believe that there will be a huge savings to the LFCCs who have to review these applications, the LEs that are helping to make sure that that process happens and works, and we believe it's going to be a cost savings to the charities as well. We have already started consolidating some of the redundant processes. We've gone out to industry and asked for proposals and standing up a consolidated website that will be both serve donors for online giving as well as charity applications. And so we're moving forward with that. We're also working with the payroll offices to try to figure out a standard way that this information gets reported. Some of you know if you deal with the Interior Business Center, you'll get one set of reports. If you deal with DFAS, you'll get another set of reports that may not have the detail you want. So we're really trying to work with them to get that standardized. The other thing that was interesting in terms of when Director Archuleta was about to get confirmed by the Senate, she wanted a briefing on CFC. And so I showed her this map. And her eyes just glazed over. She said, I can't believe that you're trying to manage all these different areas. And even with all this, after 50 solicitations in the federal workspace dealing with the CFC, we are still not covering all federal employees. Not all federal employees in this century can give to the CFC because there's white space. And so the previous OPM director also felt the same way, that we really need to look at that. And so after we got the rules done, after we got the comments in, after we issued the final rules, we wanted to then take another look at the zoning. And so this is, after getting Director Archuletta's approval, this was the proposed approach that we came up with in terms of the proposed CFC boundaries. And in the last 2 weeks, we sent out invitations to invite almost 2,000 federal employees to have a discussion on this and the new rules. And I know my staff has been working tirelessly, and I'm sure they got cotton mouths just trying to unfold and disseminate the information related to this. I really appreciate the time that all the federal employees took to sit through those calls and provide us ideas on these boundaries and the rules in general. But we just wanted to make sure that we touch base with each and every campaign before we move forward with this. What I'm really excited about, and there's a whole segment on this later, is universal giving. Now, what's not on the slide is that we had 2 other initiatives that I believe are equally as important that engage the federal employees. Last year, I talked a little bit about volunteerism and how there's a linkage between how some employees feel or get involved with the campaign if they aren't situated to be able to help financially. And so there's a linkage between volunteering and actual future financial contributions. And there was a study done that was done for our office that showed that there's a linkage. And so we've got a project out now, a pilot, that's going to involve a volunteer bulletin board. And there's some folks that are going to talk about that, I believe, later today. There's also another pilot that is called CARE, that the basic thrust of it is that we want to make sure that employees understand and feel appreciated about the donations that they provide. And so this gives them an automatic thank you when they make a contribution. So I believe there's going to be a presentation on that pilot as well. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to do, initiatives to transform this program, but this is the one that I really get excited about, and that's universal giving. There's also going to be a specific segment that talks about universal giving, the pros and the cons, the ups and downs dealing with that after our 2-year pilot. But I've been really impressed at the overall initial results where employees are finally, for the first time, able to give outside of their area. In fact, 3 years ago, last week, my father passed away from Parkinson's disease. And so I've always had a relationship with the caregivers, the charity that helped him during hospice in his last days of life back in Ohio. For the first time this year, I was able to use the CFC process to actually give to that charity as opposed to giving outside of CFC. So I'm really stoked about this, and I've been to talk to other senior executives in the government, and they also wasn't even aware of this process. And when I spoke to them about it, they said that was the #1 reason why they gave this year, was for that option. So I just want to kind of leave you with a quick thought as I try to close here. So clearly, OPM saw the value of spearheading its own CFC reform and transformation initiative long before OMB or GAO or Congress decided to force one on us. We really wanted to make sure that we understood what the issues were, and so that's why we invited a lot of you to the table in discussing exactly what those reforms should look like. We understand that there still needs to be continuing work in order to get this done. It has not been easy. There's been some bumps, but we have certainly learned a lot. I've learned a lot. We need to preserve the best practices while at the same time stabilizing a steep decline in participation and also stimulating interest in the CFC again. I always love a healthy debate on how we can expand the program, but it's important to me, however, that whatever we do, we have to engage the next generation of donors so that we can continue to see the awesome job that this program and this federal benefit offers. Again, thanks for all your support. I really appreciate all your help, and that's all I have for now, but I'm open to questions. Can you?
This thing on. There we go. My name is Trevor Payne. I work for the Postal Service out of Columbus, Ohio. And I don't know if there's any other organizations, but our workforce is transitioning to a non-career workforce. And I have a question as how we're going to be able to handle that with the CFC contributions. Are the CCAs, and the PSEs, their union dues get restarted when they come back after their 5-day break? Their health benefits restart after their 5-day break. However, their CFC contributions stop. Is there any way we're going to be able to fix that?
Well, you just stated a huge problem that I identified early on in this process, is that we have a suite of benefits that OPM manages, but they don't act the same. So the health insurance and life insurance premiums are all triggered by the same HR documents, if you will, that pass to those payroll providers and Postal Service or Shared Service, whoever has that portfolio. And so there's no reason why they should stop. And so I've asked that question over and over again, and I think as we consolidate this process and continue to work with their shared service providers, payroll processors, that will fix that problem too. Now, I don't know how much of the workforce is not going to be federal employees. I'm not sure I understand that part. So are they going to be contractors or?
It's a long.
You started the question, you started the debate, so I just want to understand it fully.
The Postal Service has a plan, and like right now, probably about a quarter of our employees are the non-career employees. They will be career employees at some point. But it's been a concern as far as us is when we go out and to solicit these employees, they're interested in contributing to the CFC. However, depending on when their break in service is, their contributions stop.
Right.
The CFC ends up losing out on money because of this payroll issue. And nobody seems to be able to have a clear-cut answer as to why the contributions stop, however, everything else continues. And it's going to be more of an issue maybe with just the Postal Service, but it's something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later.
Can you pass along your information to my staff or me? Because I'd like to find out what reg or what rule allows this sort of non-career status, and then that may be the trigger for me working with our other benefit folks at OPM on how we can sort of close the gap on that.
It's probably going to be based on the union contracts.
Sure.
There's I believe it's the APWU maybe starting their negotiations, I believe tomorrow, the NLC later on next year. But I'm pretty sure that that's what the issue is going to be.
So you're saying it's proposed right now, it's not in effect. You're saying that it's going to this new.
Well, no, I mean, it's into an effect now where if I had a non-career employee who says,
Okay.
yes, I'd love to contribute,
Okay.
knowing that when they hit their 5-day break, their contributions stop and do not start again.
Okay. Yeah, if you could send your information, at least as a touch point, I'd like to get more information on that, including the APWU contract. Thanks. I think.
I'll just talk really loud. I know that we want to engage the new
Right. So I think got 3 questions in there. Right. So are we going to, engage younger donors? Well, I think we have to do that. But I heard on the news this morning, and this might be old statistic, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Last year, the student loan debt on American students is over $1 trillion. Let that swirl around for a minute. That's almost more assets than OPM manages for all federal pensioners. That's huge. I'm sorry? 6.4% of what? Okay, well, even if it was 0, okay, that's $1 trillion. So when I talk about today's workforce, I'm really talking about the folks who are really just coming into federal service. Again, not that people who are more mature in their career don't count, but most of those give in some way. But the donors who are coming in strapped with that kind of out-of-the-gate responsibility is huge. And so they're not even given to their thrift savings plans, much less CFC. So how are we going to make it attractive? So that's the thing that we really have to think about, and we're really looking for outreach coordination that helps us get to that. And if we have that focus concentration as opposed to shuffling the money around, I think we can get some answers, whether it's social media or volunteerism, all the things that I've mentioned earlier. Retirees. So if you indulge me for just 1 second, I don't know how we're doing on time. I looked at the CFC reformed in 2 phases. The first phase I thought would probably be one of the easier phases, and it was challenging. But at the same time, write the rules or implement the things that we didn't need rules for, start those now. Things that we needed rule changes for, once the rules are done, we'll implement those. And then if I have to get a law changed or an executive order, I will focus on that last. But everything was started at the same time. It was just, longer poles in the tent. The retiree pole in the tent requires a change in the current executive order. And that executive order initially started back in Eisenhower. So I'm working on trying to make sure that retirees are written into the next executive order. At the same time, there are statutory laws that have to be changed in terms of what allotments can come out of annuity payroll. And that process is already underway. So I'm confident now that we have universal giving, because that was part of the hook, where that money was going to go and how could they give and where were they going to give, that's now not an issue. We needed universal giving to do that. Now with the centralized website, we're even that step closer to the retirement piece. But I don't know how we deal with the young folks in the debt. I haven't an answer for that yet.
Keith Larry Cummings from Medical Research Charities Federation. To your last point about engaging more donors, we've been doing things on social media to try and attract more donors. And one of the problems is that if we can bring them to our website to learn about our charities, but they can't then go make their pledge, which is clearly an impediment. The other issue we ran into this year was I went on the National Capital Area website during the campaign, and I typed in, using the charity search feature, I typed in medical research charities, and we came up 67th. And the response that I was given was that the regulations require a random search. Well, I understand the regulations may require random draw for the booklet, but it doesn't make any sense that if somebody's looking for a charity and they type its name in, that charity wouldn't come up. Actually, I went back to my office in San Diego and tried doing the same thing for the San Diego CFC, and a similar problem came up. So on the other hand, if I typed in the CFC number, then it would come up. But it makes no sense that somebody looking for a charity by name can't reach it as you'd expect they would.
Right. No, I agree. And like I showed you on the slide 2010, how we've made leaps in some areas, and we've seen it gone backwards in some others, is true for this as well. So I think we're going to get better at search logic as we start building out this central website. When we have a central website, you won't have the confusion of what you just mentioned about someone going to looking up what's going on the website and then having to get out of it in order to donate. So the centralized website should solve that problem.
Yeah, it should. I mean, I'm told by, I'm not a tech guy, but I'm told by tech people that the problem I just described is a pretty easy one to fix.
And I would probably agree with you.
So,
Everything is easy until you start building the logic or the algorithm, but at the same time, I know we're going to solve that problem.
Hi, good afternoon. Howard Reitman, Miami VA Medical Center. I've been involved with the LFCC for 3 years. I did a year as a campaign manager. And one of the things that happens down in the weeds, and I'm going to get down in the weeds a little bit, and then I'll get to my question, is a lot of campaigns get cash, and I understand cash is going away from the OPM conference call from a few weeks ago. The other issue that surprised us, or surprised me at least on the conference call, was various things that campaigns do to generate income would have to be tied to an educational event in order to now meet the rules. So, for example, if you had a dunking, like I'm from Florida. Florida is hot. They use dunking booths. Various campaigns have other various means of generating income outside of direct donations. Now, the reason for these things going away, because they generate significant income, there must have been a logical reason that we weren't given, but I think it needs to be looked at again, is you really want these avenues of revenue to go away.
Right. No, I appreciate that, and we had a lot of discussion and comments, interagency comments during the public comment period, and even subsequently since then. And I think a lot of it comes down to the focus of the appropriations, quite frankly. And with appropriations getting squeezed on all levels of agencies, they're just having to really make choices about where employees are spending their time. And so that has a lot to do with it. The other thing is, when you say significant contributions, and it may be an individual campaign that may be the case, I don't know. But at a macro level, the level of money that we get in undesignated that's associated with those events that are cash and carry is not a lot. It sure is a lot for charities, but in the macro look of it, it's not a lot of money. And it carries a lot of unintended consequences and risk. I used to be an OIG auditor. I can't even imagine. We got rid of our Impress fund that gave cash advances to people in the 90s. So very few agencies are handling cash within the agency walls. I left government and came back, and they still had armored trucks coming in, taking retiree checks out of OPM. Killed that too. We went to a point of sale system. So I think there's a lot of custody issues relating to cash in the agency that maybe weren't, as acute 10, 15 years ago. And I have some cases about things in fraud that I can't even talk about up here. So we're really just trying to get it back to a more simplified way that people give, and people like online. I think we're proving it out, even in the markets that we're currently using, and it's not 100%, that we're almost up to now 50% of the contributions coming through online. So I don't know if that helps you or not, but or explains the logic at all. Okay, well, we're going to have a LFCC breakout tomorrow, I believe, and we're going to get into a little bit more of the Q&A that came out of those discussions over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully we can deal with that specifically for you. I apologize. Next.
Hi, this is Amy from Pittsburgh. A couple questions, and I'm sorry if I don't know these answers and everybody else does. Regarding the centralized website, has a vendor been chosen? If so, when will we know that? I assume this all takes place 2016, and so the current contracts that we may have with other vendors, such as, say, Nexus, will they still be involved or not? Like, how, just the concern of the centralized website, obviously that will take them to EEX, MyPay, and the current?
Well, as I mentioned, that we've gone out to industry and asked for their solutions. We have not awarded anything yet.
Nothing yet.
So, no, we have not.
Is there a goal for a deadline on that?
There's always a goal and a deadline.
Is it like September, October?
It will be up and running for the 2016 campaign.